Okay, we're back here. Hopefully, we'll have some folks on here to share in this discussion, which I found pretty fascinating to look at all these comments that came in when I just mentioned this topic, and people really responded in a big way here. Let me see. I want to get to the comments to begin this because there are so many interesting ones. I'm just going to go through them and we'll see what people are saying here. I'm just going to go down the list. So this is, there are 72 comments. I'm not going to read them all. I'll do the shorter ones to start out. Ted's music. Maybe a better question is, why don't we subsidize jazz like we do classical music, the opera and ballet, so that our culture doesn't die? John McLaughlin makes a good argument for this. That would really be a really sensible thing. But I don't think America is a country that wants to embrace its own culture. It's mainly interested in exploiting it. Jeffrey Newton responds to that comment because the artists are the individual or small group for the most part, as opposed to 100-member symphony orchestra. That and rich people feel important when they go to the symphony, so they throw money at symphonies, as does Uncle Sam. Jazz is still a bastard child. However, the U.S. military is by far the largest subsidizer of music in the USA, including jazz. Every base has a jazz band. It's a great gig if you can stand the military lifestyle. Yeah. Someone came back, subsidized music? That idea needs to be eliminated. Okay. Tony Buimi. Jazz and classical and theater take at least a little knowledge of music, and we see society fading on so many fronts. It's sad, but reality is the U.S. culture has declined drastically in the past 30 years. Look at theater as well. Dying arts except for the wealthy. My mother sang with Ted Lewis. Me and My Shadow was his big song. And I was exposed to music at a young age in the 60s, so I was lucky. My grandmother played piano in silent movies in New York City, and her family were musicians. Lucky for me. Economically, middle-class people are losing disposable income from government-created inflation, so we have to cut out entertainment. Death by 1,000 cuts. Well, Tony, I think you've made some really good points here. Unfortunately, you're right in many ways. I don't think the arts are dying so much as being ignored because of a variety of factors, so many choices, the screwed up times we're living in. It's true that going to theater in New York City, going to a Broadway show, Hamilton was $600 a ticket. But it costs at least $100 to see a Broadway show. And go to a jazz club, you're going to spend nearly that as well. So only certain numbers of people have that kind of disposable income. But in New York City, you could get down to Smalls for over $25 and hear a lot of music and walk out of the club without losing your bankroll. So, and there are other places around that. There's plenty of jazz in other cities. It's not a giant thing, but believe me, there's a lot of people playing this music, even here in Tucson, Arizona, which is hardly a bastion of jazz. There's a jazz club here now, and there's some really good musicians. And I think that's true in a lot of cities. Jeffrey Lawrence. There are many styles of jazz. I think it's an art form that's still evolving. Sometimes when people find out that a popular song was written by a jazz artist, their heads explode. But I think the key is early education about the music and encourages a fertile mind. Jeffrey, I couldn't agree with you more. I think education is the key to reaching people and turning them onto jazz. And as I mentioned previously, one of the aspects of the decline of the arts in America, especially music, is that we lost music education in schools back in the 80s. So unfortunately, people aren't sophisticated. Kids aren't sophisticated. And with so many different choices, they may never know about jazz. But nevertheless, there are jazz programs in some schools, and playing an instrument is still fun. So I'm hopeful. Acid for Blood. He'll give a blood contribution if you give him some acid. Acid for Blood says, I think the word hate is a strong word. I think it's like anything music. It's a matter of taste. Simply, there are a lot of great genres of music I don't like, but I think people don't perhaps understand the art form of jazz, generally speaking. So he thinks it's a comprehensive, people just don't comprehend it. They just don't get it. Krypton Reef, interesting name. The more stressed people are, the more they crave predictability. The predictability is intolerable to a person in survival mode. Jazz requires the listener to let go and just listen. A lot of people in modern society are too rigid for that. Yes, you speak the truth, my friend, especially now after COVID. The surviving is tough. A reply to this. Let's see what that reply is. Alan Kirkby says, very interesting analysis. My personal view is if the people who don't like jazz took the time to study the history and evolution of jazz, they would hopefully when they hear modern jazz, solo, small group, big band, fusion, and so forth, perhaps get some idea what the music is all about. Anyway, peace to all. Of course, if people hear it and they spend they give it more than a cursory listen, and even better if they go to hear it live, they're probably going to get turned on to it. They're going to like it. Most people do when they actually take the time to sit there and listen to it. Legal Eagles. People aren't exposed to too much of the jazz. He calls it the jazz. People aren't exposed to too much of the jazz that people like us listen to. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you, sir. People aren't exposed to too much of the jazz that people like us listen to. I really enjoy taking people on a jazz journey. Let's be the educators, not the preachers. Yeah. People. It's interesting. These comments are very thoughtful, well written, and I see jazz listeners. I don't want to say they're more intelligent. Perhaps they use their brains more often, their creativity. That said, anybody can get into the music, no matter who they are. Okay, let's see here. Oh, somebody put a porn thing in here. When people leave comments on my channel, they sometimes include links to porn. They spam my videos. So I have to report it to YouTube and they take them away. Okay. Vic NSI. His profile picture says straight out of nowhere. I don't know if that's a film or what that's about or a political movement. Anyway, Vic says, it's so easy to hate something you don't understand. My view is, I think it's impossible to hate this art form if one were opportune to become well-informed as to what jazz is really about. Not just as a culture, i.e. the lifestyle of its early practitioners, but it's also technically as a discipline. Yeah. Okay. Robert Elcock. I think people hate jazz because they don't know how to hear when they can't anticipate what's coming next. They prefer familiar and predictable music. Let me grab a spot of my lemon soda here and I'll respond to that. Okay. Yes, I think people have been conditioned to respond to something that's familiar. They can easily go back to. They don't have to think. They don't want to explore so much. So I agree with that. Jazz is never the same. Improvisation is of the moment. Some people are not going to like that. Okay, let's see. Andrew Sanzini. Seems to be a hit and miss thing. I'm nearly 20 and have been hooked since I was a child. Well, there are young people who dig jazz. I mean, on my statistics, let me jump over to that for a second here. I'm going to give you the statistic as to what are the age groups who are watching my video here, my videos on the YouTube channel. Let me see here, analytics. I have complicated audience. Okay. Let me break it down here. That's when they come. Where's the age? Okay, this is interesting. Top geographics. 37.5% of my audience is from the United States, 6.7% Japan, 5% the UK, 3.9 France, 3.7 Italy. Goes down 167 different countries. Let's see here. Okay, 92% of my viewers are men. Okay, under 13.2%. But the 18 to 24 is perhaps the youngest, the smallest demographic, 10.9, about 11%. And 65 plus is the highest with 26%. And 55 to 64 next, 21.5. And then between 18 and 54, between 10 and 15%. So the audience, nearly half of my audience is over 55. And only a quarter of my audience is under 25. I'd like to change that around. And I think that's the challenge that we face here. You know, as we go down to these comments. Now, I have some skin in the game, so to speak, only because I love jazz. It's been a part of my life since I was a kid. I think it's a very unique, exciting art form. And I think it's good for your brain and your spirit and your soul to listen to it. So from my perspective, I want more people to jump on this bandwagon that I'm on. The thing about jazz that I think opens it up to so many people is it's an umbrella word for so many different types of music. The common theme, improvisation. But once you get outside that, at this point, really it could be anything, as we know. So I think I got, I don't want to go to any more into the hate thing here. We got the picture, there's some common theme here. Although one comment did say that women don't like it because other women aren't involved in it. That used to be true, but that's rapidly changing. As there are more and more women playing jazz, still not as many as men, but the numbers are growing, and women are making important contributions. Women like, we lost Jerry Allen, but Esperanza Spalding, Terry Lynn Carrington. There's some incredible people out there of the female persuasion. But I understand that. Mostly jazz dudes. 92% of the viewers on my channel are jazz dudes. So let's get more women in here, hopefully. Certainly, when I listen to music, I close my eyes. I leave behind who the person is, where they're from, what they look like, what sex they are, whatever. It's one thing. Either they can play or they can't play. It's really as simple as that. And more women can play. There's certainly no doubt about that. So I bid you a fond farewell for, I don't know how long it'll be, because I'm in this process of relocating to Guanajuato, Mexico. I'll probably post a video in a couple of weeks of what it looks like down there. And there is jazz in Guanajuato. In fact, the next town near Guanajuato is San Miguel de Allende, which is a kind of a part-time residence for Doc Severinsen. Doc went to hear a Spanish band down there, a Mexican band, and liked the music so much he sat in, and he ended up hiring him to be his group. Doc's amazing, in his 90s, still playing. Wow, what an inspiration he is, Doc Severinsen. Yeah. So I will probably shoot some video down there of jazz musicians on the street, concerts, clubs, a lot of music down there, a lot of culture down there, which is why it's exciting for me. A very vibrant place. Now, I got a big challenge ahead of me, a huge challenge. I've got to become fluent in Spanish. Right now, I'm still having my high school Spanish. I could barely have a conversation. I'm going to jump into this intensely because it's something I really want to do. And I love to talk to people about their stories. For many years, I've been talking to jazz musicians about their stories. Now, as I integrate myself into Mexican culture, I want to talk to Mexican people about their stories. To do that, I will need to be able to speak the language. So that's the next step for me. Thanks for taking the time to view this video. Stay healthy. Keep listening to jazz. As I mentioned, it's good for you. And if you can, turn a friend or two onto the music. Couldn't hurt. Bye.